welcome back to my channel. Now I want to do a bit of a chat about types of meditation. So there are two forms of meditation certainly that I use. So there's that mindful meditation, and then there's the guided visualization. So they're the two sort of main branches. There are many other offshoots of all of those. But they're the two that I certainly work with and the two that I'm most familiar with. So what's the difference and what's the benefits? So I'll try and, as ever, you know me, I will try and be concise, and I will try and be, what's the word I want? I'll try and keep it simple and not waffle. I can't promise, but I will try. If you're familiar with mindfulness but don't know it as that name, you might know it as being present, being in the now, all of those type of words. So the king of being present is Eckhart Tolle, who's a German chap. This book has been in print for over 20 years. I came across it over 20 years ago. And it's been reprinted and reprinted many, many times. This is all about being present. So the mind or the brain is a really powerful tool. And it's like any other muscle in our body. And when we become present, when we become mindful, we actually stop our brain on that hamster wheel. Many people call it the monkey mind. The brain's going in 600 different directions all at once. And did you know that you have so many thoughts and layers of thoughts that all sort of run into each other? And it's only when you try to do that quiet mind, no mind, mindfulness meditation, where there are no thoughts, there is just nothing, is when you realize how busy your mind is. Now you can train your mind. As I said earlier, you can train your mind like you can any other muscle in your body. So, you know, when you're a top athlete, you practice your sport and other disciplines to gain strength, stamina, muscle tone, all of that type of thing. Working with the mind is absolutely no different. It's just another muscle. And I'm sure you know, there's so much of our brain that we don't even use. What do we use? 1% of it or something? So going into things like mindful meditation and mindful meditation is a challenge to start with, but it's actually quite life-changing. I just want to share something with you, actually. So in 2016, I had a stroke, and not a big one, but I had a minor stroke. I had what's known as a TIA, and I was definitely not properly not right for about 6 months. Anyway, because I had sort of still pins and needles and funny feelings or non-feelings in my left arm, they sent me for a CT scan, a brain scan. And having been in one of these big tunnels, it's like, I don't think I like this, and it's quite noisy. And if you've had one of those, you'll know what I mean. Very, very enclosed. So I'm not claustrophobic particularly, but it's like, don't think I like this very much. Anyway, so I thought the only thing I can do actually is some meditation for the few minutes I was in there. And so I did some sort of mindful breathing and some meditation for the 4 or 5 minutes I was in there. And when I went back to see the consultant, she said to me, do you know, I've never ever seen a brain like yours. It is perfectly balanced. Both sides of the brain it's in really good shape. So although I'd had a TIA, there's no damage to my brain. I do wonder about that sometimes, but hey ho. And she said, actually, in all the years I've been a consultant, it's the best brain I've ever seen. Now, I put that down to doing 30 years-ish of meditation. So meditation can be used for, like mindfulness, can be used for calming you in stressful situations. And it's not always easy to do, I appreciate that. But it brings you into the present moment, because if you've seen one of my other videos, you'll have seen me talk about how guilt tends to live in the past, and things like anxiety live in the future, because we're projecting our energy or our thoughts or our worries or our anxieties or our fears or any of those other feelings into the future, which creates our anxiety and our stresses. And guilt, and a bit like shame, live in the past. So we're beating ourselves up over things that have gone and we can't do anything about, and it eats away at us. And that reduces our peace of mind. So when we've come into finding or creating mindful meditation and do a regular mindful practice, we come into the now and we become present. I would really recommend reading The Power of Now. There are many, many other books on the market around mindfulness, and there's obviously lots of videos and things. But ultimately, mindful sort of gets the easiest way to start with mindfulness or mindful meditation is connecting to the breath. Now, on my website, I have the head-heart meditation, which is about connecting to the breath. And when you connect to the breath and you slow your breathing down and you control your in and out breath, what it does, it actually calms the parasympathetic nervous system. So if you're in a bit of a panic and you're very stressed, you're very anxious or very nervous or whatever, find some time and just do some, if nothing else, do some slow breathing. And you've got to breathe through the nose, ideally through the nose if you can. It's the best way to do it. Breathe through the nose and fully take your whole attention to your nostrils, to the in and the out breath. So that's sort of a very simplistic view of mindful meditation. Now, I was doing this work 20 years ago, over 20 years ago now. And when it's practiced regularly, what's really interesting and what I found is that your actual physical body, your sense of, if you like, self, completely disappears. And as you then become like pure energy. I feel my hands fizzing just talking about this. And then what happens with practice, and it does take practice. It probably took me 3 months of regular twice a day practice to really, really hone this. So there is a need to be dedicated to this if you're going to do it. But what happens with the practice is that the self disappears. You always actually find yourself touching your body, go, well, am I here? Where have I gone? And that physical body disappears and you become pure energy. And you connect to the entirety of what I call the soup of the universe. So you become a part of the universe, of the collective, of the oneness. And believe me, that is so powerful. It is so powerful. And this was the precursor. This work, I've been doing this work for maybe 5 years or so before I met the dragons. And that, I'm sure this was the precursor to me being in the right vibrational or frequency to connect with the dragons. It's really, really interesting. And what's really interesting is that I actually tried to do this last night. And I struggled to do it because I haven't actually done that particular type of meditation for a lot of years. And I do mindfulness and breathing and that kind of thing. But that particular meditation, I've not done for a very long time. And so I need to practice that again. So that's probably why I'm talking about this today, because it's obviously come onto my radar. And if it's on my radar, I guess you guys need it too. So there are varying levels of mindful meditation, but the key is you can count the breath. So each inhale and exhale is counted as one. And if a thought comes in, you stay as one. So while you're focusing on the breath, the inhale and the outhale, inhale and exhale, you're counting. So I'll just give you a quick demonstration. So it's, you breathe in and release. That's counted as one breath. And if thoughts come in, you stay at one. But if you can go, then if you have no thoughts, you do an inhale and an exhale, an inhale and an exhale, and you get to 2 or you get to 3. You keep going up to about 9 or 10, no more than that, with no thoughts. Then you come back to 1. So that's one way of doing mindful meditation. So that's that particular one. And it's great for controlling the brain, controlling the mind, bringing you into the present. And what happens is when you come into that mindfulness work, is that you then have heightened or higher awareness of yourself. And then in comes the shadow work, in comes the deeper healing, because you have a higher or a deeper understanding of the self. And that opens the door to a whole host of other things, which is why the dragons like mindful work, because they like us to do our healing, they like us to do our shadow work. Yes, do our spirit work and work for the planet and communities and everything else, but ultimately it starts with us. So that's the mindful bit. Now the other one is guided visualizations, or connecting to your guides or dragons or whoever. Now that is, my friend describes this. I've got a friend that's very clairvoyant, and she used to do trance work, and she would do all kinds of different types of trance work. And so her guides literally gave her brain a ball to play with, or a mind a ball to play with. So she'd go off somewhere, play with this ball, and then spirit could take over and she could do her trance work. Now in a very similar vein, visualization meditation, where you go off on a jaunt or a walk or a journey, is you're visualizing a beach or a rainforest or a cottage in the woods or whatever, or beautiful gardens. It's the same principle, actually, as giving your mind a ball to play with, because when your mind is absorbed and creating images, you then get out of your own way and you can make your spiritual connection. And one of the things that I used to do, or I used to teach, and I still use it today, and I've been teaching this for probably over 20 years, maybe 25 years, is going to a glade in the woods. And if you've done any of my work with me, you'll know that it's something that I go back to time and time again, because the mind, the ego part of ourself, needs to feel safe. So it's that repetition of going to a familiar place or a familiar space. And the mind has an idea of what's coming up. Oh, I know what this is. Oh, this is what this is all about. I know where we're going. And the mind will be quieter and allow you to go off on your journey. Now, I used to have a pyramid. So when I did meditations like this years ago, I'd have a pyramid, and I always had a lapis lazuli pyramid, because lapis lazuli is, well, it's a psychic connection. It's also it's also very protecting. And I'd walk into this pyramid in the middle of these woods. See, it doesn't matter how crazy it is. Maybe the crazier the better. But anyway, and there was no doors. But as I approached, a door would slide open. And every time I go into my pyramid, it could be different every time. It could be a library. It could be comfy chairs and side tables and little lamps. But if I walked through the door, my gatekeeper, my spiritual bouncer was there. My spiritual bouncer is called Bim, and he's been with me ever since I started this journey. And interestingly, when I talked to Bim and asked him about, why was he with me and all that kind of thing, he was actually my son in a previous life. So the life he shows himself, and he's actually a Maasai warrior, and I was his mother in a previous life. And so he's now I gave him the gift of life. So his gift to me is the gift of protection, which I think is just really beautiful. So anyway, so I digress, as I do. So Bim would always be stood inside my pyramid. And inside there could be any number of guides or nothing at all. And other times I'd be guided. I'd have a sense or a feeling that I'd need to walk through the pyramid and out the other side. And that would take me into another vista, another scene. And that could be absolutely anything. It could be one particular time it took me onto into Plains Indians of North America, and it was into a vision of looked like the Sioux Plains Indians. So your mind will create what it needs to create for you to make contact with your guides, your dragons. So use your visualization to set the scene. As I said in the previous video, imagination is the key to starting your spiritual journey. So create the vistas, create the scenes, set the scene, and it will shift and move, as I've said previously. And then it will appear what you need to know. Guides, dragons, ascended masters, whatever. There's a particular, I had a guide that I worked with for a very long time called Lone Wolf. And he's oh gosh, what is he? I can't remember what he is, what tribe he's from. He's Native American. And I had a shop called Navajo back in the day. It's a spiritual shop, crystal shop with a holistic therapy centre attached. Anyway, somebody said to me, have you read the book, Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee? If you're interested in Native Americans, you really need to read that book. So I duly went off to what was then Earthworks at the time and bought a copy. I had a copy in the shop and I had a copy for me called Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee. And when I first met Lone Wolf, he said to me, I think, God, I can't remember. I want to say Kiowa, but I know that's not right. Kiowa. He's a Kiowa. So he's a Kiowa from the Kiowa tribe. And he said, I'm a part of the Seven Nations. I had no idea I'd never heard of Kiowa, and I didn't know what the Seven Nations were. Anyway, when I got Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee, I literally opened the book. There was a picture of Lone Wolf. He was then my spiritual teacher at the time, my spiritual guide. And it said that he was the chief of the Kiowa in whatever the date frame was. And the Kiowa were a part of the Seven Nations. And the Seven Nations were part of the bigger Sioux tribe and probably other tribes with involved. But there were Seven Nations. They were known as the Seven Nations. And this is what happens. So when you make that connection with your spirit guides, the universe will deliver the confirmation, if you like, because being human, we've got to have that confirmation. We go Googling, we go whatever. Didn't have Google then. Well, we might have just had Google then maybe. But the universe will deliver the confirmation to you one way or another. It might take a couple of years. It might happen the following day. So meditation is the key to all your spiritual work. And meditation is how you connect to your guides, to your dragons, archangels, angels, ascended masters, the fae, mermaids, spirit animals, all of it. It's just finding the right vehicle for you and deciding what type of meditation you want to do. I do use both. I do visualization and I do mindful type meditation. So it's deciding on what you want to do and setting yourself up for it. And certainly, particularly with mindful meditation, I taught this to a friend a few years ago, is actually just start with very, very small chunks, because you can't sit and go into mindful meditation for an hour because you will go stir crazy. So just set your phone, set a timer on your phone, turn it on, put it on to, you know, silent or something like that, but you have an alarm, and set it for maybe 3 minutes. And then as you get better at it, you can extend the alarm time. So you go maybe 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes. Then eventually you won't need to set a timer, and you will come back into the space when you're ready. And meditation is a great healer as well in many ways. You know, it lowers blood pressure, it lowers stress, you sleep better. It has so many benefits if you do regular meditation, the same as doing things like yoga, tai chi. They all have the same effect on the body and mind. It's just creating a regular practice. And in this day and age, we've got quite lazy, and we don't practice as regularly as we should. I know I don't meditate anywhere near as regularly as I should. And again, when you fall off that wagon, do you know what? It doesn't matter. Be aware that you've fallen off the meditation wagon, and then get back into practice a couple of times a week, and then build upon it. So that's what I wanted to say about meditation. Any thoughts or questions, put in the comments below, and I'll see you on the next video. Big love as always. Bye.